whatever it may be, and this is where if we're going to talk about coaching, this is where I have a problem with Zac Taylor. And Trace actually put in a really good analogy for Zac Taylor, and I'll get to that in a second. But they are 1-7 against playoff teams this year. You win a couple more of those, you're in the postseason. You win one more, you're in the postseason. You win two more, you're comfortably, you sit firmly in there. And I had a problem with Zac Taylor a couple weeks ago because it seemed like every single game that we play a good team, we're going up against good coaches, John Harbaugh, Jim Harbaugh, Sean Payton this past Saturday, Andy Reid, all these, well-established coaches, Mike Tomlin. And it just seemed like we always came up a little bit short. And a long time ago, I heard when you win a close game, it's because of the players. When you lose a close game, it's because of the coaching. It might be an old wives' tale. It might be just a cliche you say when things like that happen. But there's probably a little bit of truth there. A lot was to do about Zac Taylor's play calling at the end of regulation, right? Chase Brown goes down at the 1 to presumably kill the clock and will kick the field goal and win it, give them no time. Everyone said, why did you just the next play score the touchdown? And I think it's pretty cut and dry. It's because we had to take a timeout with Chase Brown, no?
Right. I thought it was pretty much a no-brainer to score the touchdown.
Right.
But that's not where we're take 3 knees. They have 1 timeout. There's 2 minutes. They'd have 20 seconds left.
They would have had because we had to call a timeout. If we
If we didn't have to call a timeout.
If we had to call a timeout, that's absolutely the right call
story.
because they would have 0 seconds. They'd have zero. They'd have. It would have been the final play of regulation.
Right.
Would have kicked the field goal. But because we had to take the timeout, they would have had the ball with 40 seconds left.
No. You start the drive with a knee. It eliminates it all. You don't run the ball.
Oh, you don't run the ball with Chase.
I think that's crazy.
No, it's crazy. They'd have 20 seconds left.
You run the ball.
You kneel the ball 3 times.
Chase Brown goes down at the 1, you win that game, which is exactly what happened.
If you kneel the ball 3 times, nobody gets hurt, and you have the same plan. If your plan is to go down at the 1, there's no difference than what kneeling the ball does.
Well, you're going to score a touchdown. You're not going to kick the field goal from the 1.
If your whole plan is to have Chase Brown go down at the 1 and then kneel it out, then why would you even run the play? Why would you not kneel it 3 times?
To get the ball to the 1 so you can run a QB sneak and score a touchdown?
You want that to happen on 4th down?
No, I would have ran it right after he went down. The Chargers would have used a timeout, then I would have ran the clock down after that and then scored a touchdown.
But what's the difference between a field goal with 15 seconds
I don't
left?
want to kick a field goal.
But see, this is where I disagree.
I have no desire to kick a field goal in that situation.
And that's fine, and you got proven right, because it ends up that our kicker can't make a 10-yard field goal anyway. But there's no coach in the world that doesn't take 3 knees right there and settle for a field goal with 15 seconds. There's no head coach in the league. Not one. Nobody has to score touchdowns like the Bengals do because of how horrible the defense is.
I didn't know anyone was debating that. I thought it was whether you kneel down after Chase Brown.
It's crazy to me. It's crazy to me to not take 3 knees. It's absolutely insane.
I would have been insane.
Because you've already won the game.
So to set up the scenario here, the Bengals converted a 3rd and 6
correct
from the Denver
Chase,
17 to Jamar Chase, which then put the ball on the 6-yard line.
Yep.
And that's where he's debating on saying that you should just take 3 knees there. Denver had used their second timeout there. So it was 1 minute and 39 seconds left on the clock.
So you kneel it once. So second down, there's 1 minute and 37. Kneel it again. It's all the way down to 58 seconds. You kneel it one more time, and you're down to 15 seconds after the made field goal. There's 12. We're talking about 12 seconds.
You'd rather give them the ball back with 15 seconds down at a field goal than just score at the end of the game?
Yes, I would. I would rather kick a field goal with 12 seconds.
You gave them.
And if they can go,
at 0.
If they can go down the field in 12 seconds, and kick a field goal without any timeouts, credit to them. Credit to our terrible defense.
But the other option is leaving it at 0 seconds and scoring with no time on the clock.
But that's not what they were going to do.
It is. Chase Brown goes down. That is what you do.
We've already said that if he would have gone down and didn't get hurt, we were going to kneel the ball. We would have ran down that clock. No or yes?
Yeah, that would have got us.
Yeah,
and you would have scored on the last play of regulation.
You would not have. You would not have scored a touchdown.
Because they would have used their last touchdown.
No, Zach said in the press conference that he would have kicked a field goal. That was their initial plan, was to kick a field goal.
But with Chase Brown down at the 1, I disagree with that. But you're still kicking at the 1 versus the 6.
So if the no. If
you run the ball with Chase Brown on that play.
Jacob, the plan was always to kick the field goal. It was always for him to go down. So if you're going to have him risk the run and have him go down, because his plan was not to score a touchdown.
Why kneel it 3 times when you can run the ball?
Because there's no injury. There's no injury risk.
So you are right that was the. In hindsight, being what it is.
If his plan, if he said after the game, we're gonna score. You're leaving 12 seconds
or
up
0.
You're leaving 12 seconds up 3 without any timeouts. There's no coach in this league.
Play of the game.
There's no coach in this league that goes for a touchdown there. Not one.
I thought it was
not a single coach.
No, you're right. You are right. But we weren't going for a touchdown there when we handed the ball off to Chase Brown, which is why we told him to go down at the 1. And I also don't think that a lot of teams need. Maybe I'm wrong. I think a lot of teams hand the ball off there, at least to get in the middle of the field and everything like that. It just happened that it was wide open for Chase and he got down to the 1. So yes, it was the wrong call to probably hand the ball off. You are right. You should probably kneel, but that's in hindsight, right? Because I think most teams still hand the ball off there.
It's not in hindsight. I said it right at the beginning. You kneel the ball. I think
there's very, very few teams that take a knee in that situation.
If you kneel the ball, you kick a field goal, the game's over. And Daryl's saying in the chat that I'd blame Zach I don't blame Zach for Cade York shanking it off the upright. I blame Zach for his nonsense there, which coached us out of this game. I blame Zach for using 2 timeouts two timeouts early in the third quarter. That's what I blame Zach for. And I think Zach, this is the first game I've given him pretty much the benefit of the doubt. I think I've blamed him a lot on this season, but for the last half of this season, I think I've been pretty nice to the guy, because at some point I can't blame Zach for having so much ineptitude on defense that nobody can save it. I don't know what he can do about that. Zac Taylor coached the Bengals, tried to coach the Bengals out of that game. 1,000,000% he did.
Let me also say this. If your scenario were to have happened and they had, let's just say for the sake of the argument, they get 15 seconds left on the
15
clock.
15 seconds with no timeouts.
So they got the ball back with 1 minute and 29 seconds left. It was 1 minute and 14 seconds, and they ran no huddle. They didn't use a timeout in the first 3 plays. They got to Cincinnati's 48-yard line. So they could have easily got into field goal range.
48-yard line's a field goal range?
Well, I'm saying they didn't use a timeout.
That's not field goal range.
I know, but they didn't use a timeout.
So
they would have a timeout.
They would have had 15 seconds to get in 25 yards. They would have needed 25 yards.
Yeah.
To at least kick a field goal. 15 seconds. It gives you 2 plays to score 25. Regardless, you are right. You should have. I think you should have need. Zach probably snafu'd that. I think that his plan wasn't the worst in the world to run the ball. Like, I think when you're running the ball, like you're right, because he got hurt and everything happened wrong. I don't think that's the end of the world to go, hey, we're going to hand the ball off to our running back, who's he's had 1 fumble this year. And we're going to say, hey, we're going to give it to you, not Joe Burrow, and you're going to run the ball, go down at the 1, and then we'll kick the field goal from there. He just happened to get hurt. So I think that it wasn't, I think that the plan was there. They just, it just happened that he got hurt. And that happens sometimes.
I have no issue. You dogged Zac Taylor for 3 runs and a field goal against the Ravens to win that game. Now you want to take 3 knees and kick a field goal to win this one.
It's so vastly different that it's not even in the same. That was a 50-yard field goal.
It's pretty similar.
That was a 50.
York.
He
missed the field goal you asked him to take. Just
okay, and that's the hindsight we get here. But you cannot possibly think that a ball that's spotted on the 6-yard line.
That entire time I was saying, please don't score a touchdown.
I wanted a touchdown.
I know who our roster is.
I wanted a touchdown too, and if that was the plan, if the plan was for us to run the ball and get in the end zone, then yeah, I'm for that plan. But that was not the plan.
No, you go down on the 1. You make him use
correct. The plan was always to never score a touchdown. The plan was
he had not. He said that in the post game. But he also lied a lot of times in post games.
Okay, well then he's a liar. Then he's a loser. So I don't know what we're doing here. I'm tired of the Zach. There's nothing to defend Zac Taylor for this season. You're having the best season of all time.
I think there's plenty.
There's no reason. No.
We're not going to do that.
No, I am going to do it. I am going to do it. You don't get credit for 1/3 of coaching the team. You don't get credit for it. Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase make this team. If they're not on the team, Zac Taylor's a nothing. He's a nobody. Not a thing.
You're not wrong there. Listen, I alluded to this. Trace put this in our group chat, and I think he's right. Zac Taylor is the Andy Dalton of coaching.
Yeah.
And he is. He's a fine coach. He's fine. He's not terrible, and he's not good. He's fine. And you said that you get no credit. You're not giving Zac Taylor any credit. I'm going to give Zac Taylor credit as our offensive play caller for having the best offense in franchise history. If you can't give someone credit for having the best offense in franchise history when you're the play caller, you're right. Now you're right. There's multiple facets. There's multiple facets to being a head coach. You've got to do the chemistry. You got to do the play calling, all that stuff. The one thing that drives me nuts about Zac Taylor, to where I will detract it from anything else, is the constant misappropriation of timeouts. And the reason I'm the conflict that it's the same way every single time. It's we're not getting a play in quick enough to where we got to call a timeout. And as the play caller, I need you to be decisive. I need you to be quicker on those timeouts in the second half. First half, I don't care. Use them whenever. Second half, you got to be quicker. You cannot waste timeouts in the third quarter. You cannot
early in the third quarter.
You cannot do that. You got to be quicker getting those plays in. We cannot have indecision. That's what it is. It's indecision. It's taking too much time to get the plays in. That's all it is. Zach, I've said this before. You threw me under the bus, and I'll own it. Defending Zach left and right. I don't care what happens with Zach. Truly do not care what happens with Zac Taylor. I know what's going to happen, and that's why I don't talk about it a whole lot. Everyone wants to always tell him that he should get fired. He should get fired. That's a nothing. That means nothing to me because he's not going to get fired. It's the same. I've made this point for 3 years now about we get to the trade deadline and we talk about it because it's sports radio and we got to talk about it for a week. Who are we going to trade? Let's go get one of these big edge rushers. Let's go get a cornerback. Let's go get another offensive lineman. Let's go do that. We have to talk about it. But it's not going to happen because they're not going to trade at the trade deadline. The only reason we made a trade this year is because we had literally no one else on the roster be our second running back. So when we sit here and we want to go fire Zac Taylor, fire Zac Taylor, fire Zac Taylor, I'm okay if he gets fired. I'm fine with it. The problem is I know it's not going to happen, so I'm not going to waste my breath talking about it. Instead, I'll lift things up. I'll give the positives of coaching. At the game on Saturday, I sat right behind this dude. Golly, I hate negative fans. And this dude sat in front of me. He had slick back hair. I think he had a Rolex on. He's wearing fancy boots, and he's sitting up. I was like, hey, man, you think you're so rich? You're sitting up in the nosebleeds with me, Bubba. And he cried. I almost said the B word. He cried about every single play in that first half to a point where I looked at my wife, Mariana. I was like, I'm going to kill this guy. We had this dude who had no teeth behind me who was cheering for every play. It's like we need 60,000 of these guys and 0 of these guys at this stadium right now. But that's where I'm at with Zac Taylor. We fire him, that's fine. He's Andy Dalton. He's fine. You can talk yourself into keeping him around, and you can easily talk yourself out and moving on. It's fine. But I'm also just not going to sit here and waste my breath and talk about firing Zac Taylor because I know for dang sure that Mike Brown's not going to pay Zac Taylor to not coach next year, and that's what would have to happen. To fire him, he'd have to pay his contract. And I know on top of that, for dang sure, Mike Brown's not going to pay one of these top-end Mike Vrabel-like coaches $12, $15 million when you got a coach who's fine for $4 or whatever Zac Taylor gets paid.
And by the way, a point for Jacob and you, and Everett made it in the chat. Joe Burrow likes Zac Taylor, and that's the part of it all where, as a fan who wants to see Joe Burrow succeed, it's very, very frustrating. Because if Joe Burrow, I want to make something very clear. If Joe Burrow wanted him gone, and Jacob and I have had this discussion multiple times.
He'd be gone at the day's end.
He'd be gone within, I think Jacob's made it, he'd be gone before the conversation ended.
Yeah.
That's how fast he'd be gone. So if Joe Burrow wanted that, he'd have that. Because it's an easy decision by the front office. Nobody cares about Zac Taylor, as Reed has just made a point about. My issue is that, again, it feels at times that he's holding this team back, and he held that team back on Saturday. There's no doubt about it. What? Those 2 timeouts that were so early in the third quarter, unbelievable timeout calling.
So I'm at the point now, because like I said, with the timeouts, and they drive me bananas, and it's from indecision. Don't get it twisted of why we're taking those calls.
Yeah.
It's because Zach isn't getting the plays in quick enough. So then they're scrambling, and then they look at the clock. Oh, we ran out of time. I'm at the point now when it's third quarter, unless we're in plus territory, unless we're in kicking range and it's 3rd and 6 and a 5-yard penalty takes us out of field goal range, which it seemingly thinks everything's going to take us out of field goal range.
It was 3rd and 17, dude. He called a timeout on 3rd and now granted, they got it, but it was 3rd and 17. Right. There is no reason to call a timeout in that spot.
In the first 2 quarters, call the timeouts, right? Yeah. Don't take the penalty. First 2 quarters, call the timeouts, get the right play in, and like that. In the second half, we need those, baby. We need those puppies. We need them. And it all worked out. Everything seemingly worked out on Saturday. Here's what, now I'm going down a different rabbit hole. Does it feel like this season, all these close games, all this crazy stuff happening, does it feel like it's just the inverse? It's just everything coming back to find its level in terms of luck? Because we were called the luckiest team in football on that 2-year playoff run. We talk about this all the time in baseball. I think the 2023 Marlins were like 30-8 in 1-run games. Yeah. And everyone was like, all right, this doesn't seem sustainable. We got all those interceptions and turnovers in the postseason, and it really did. We did have a lot of luck. I will argue that the Chiefs seemingly have a lot of luck all the time, and it seems that the best team's the Patriots, and I'm sure the 90s Cowboys were really lucky too. But to me, it almost just feels like it just kind of came back to this level, right? Yeah. We had our luck in that 2-year run. Now we're coming back to where if we can just win one of those games, one of those other games that just, how did we lose? 4th and 16, 2 10-point leads against the Ravens at home. The Chargers make a field goal, all that stuff that just seems unlucky. It follows, it just found its level. And now we got a blank slate going into next year. Now it's a blank slate of
we didn't get any. I mean, there was one play of luck that happened this season for the Cincinnati Bengals, and it was the blocked punt miracle.
One of the luckier plays, maybe ever.
It was truly
didn't know the rule.
It was by a former Bengal, right? Wasn't it?
Yeah, Nick Vigil was right.
Yeah, wasn't that?
Correct.
So just nothing went our way. I mean, and by the way, and as we wind down this segment, our kicking situation is so disgusting. And shout out to Ryan Rico, doesn't matter. He's phenomenal. That guy's great.
He's a good punter.
The kicking situation has to be addressed next year. You can't play football without a kicker. It just can't happen. So whatever's going to happen next year, it's going to have to start with Evan McPherson, and that's the least of our problems. As ironic as it all is, you can't play football without a kicker. You have a defense that needs so much help. An offensive line. This offensive line is going to give up maybe as many sacks as he had in 2021. I think he had 50 sacks in 2021. He's at 44 right now. He can absolutely get the same amount of sacks as that season with one of the worst offensive lines in league history.
So our line is, you're right, it's bad. And I just talked about how great it's been to where you.
It's been okay.
It's Joe.
Barry Smith has been great.
Joe has been so much better. He's played so much better behind this line that you just don't a lot of times don't even recognize how bad the line is. We are in a much better spot offensive line-wise now than we were 3 years ago. Like, that's 100% true. Orlando Brown's a good tackle. He's a pretty good tackle. Mims looks to be a guy that can be here for a really long time protecting Joe Burrow. So that's where I will be a little positive. Now, the rest of it needs some work. But the two most important pieces, the guys on the end, that's better. And we're in a much better spot. So that's good. That's good.
And that's what I wanted to add. And we'll end this segment, ESPN 1410 Wing AM. And my question to you guys is, do you believe that Zac Taylor, as the head coach of this football team, somebody with a lot of say, do you think he's going to be able to build up this team for next season? Do you think he's going to have the team ready? Do you think he's going to be able to convince Duke Tobin to be able to spend some money, get the job done, and fix every hole that this roster has? I don't know if that's possible.